In the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium, humanity faces its darkest hour in 10,000 years. Half the galaxy is cloaked by the warp scar of the Great Rift, as demon Primarchs and the armies of chaos ravage world after world. The Imperium, beset by xenos invasions and heretic wars, has been pushed to the brink. Two of the Emperor's loyal sons have returned to rally mankind. Guilliman, the Avenging Son, and Lion L. Johnson, the Lion of Caliban, both reappearing in humanity's time of greatest need. Yet even their combined leadership cannot be everywhere at once. With the forces of chaos and alien horrors on the rise, many within the Imperium whisper a hopeful question. Which Loyalist Primarch will return next?
This video explores that very question. We'll investigate each missing Loyalist Primarch, their fates, the lore and prophecies surrounding them, and the evidence from official releases and fan theories. Common wisdom holds that certain Primarchs are destined to reappear, but there are surprising twists in the lore that challenge those expectations. Could the next returning demigod be the one everyone anticipates, or a wildcard no one sees coming? By examining Imperial records, chapter legends and Games Workshop's recent narrative moves, we'll piece together a picture of who is most likely to rise and lead the Imperium in its time of need. The stage is set in a 3-act saga, from the sorrow of their loss, through the signs of their coming, to the climactic choice of the most likely returning hero. Stay with us as we delve into the fates of the Emperor's loyal sons, and build a case for the Primarch most likely to come home next. Before looking to who might return, we must acknowledge those Loyalist Primarchs whose fates are considered final. Ferrus Manus of the Iron Hands and Sanguinius of the Blood Angels both died during the Horus Heresy, and their deaths form pivotal moments in Imperial history. Ferrus Manus met his end at the tragic Drop Site Massacre on Istvan V. There, in the first major battle of the Heresy, he confronted his once trusted brother Fulgrim, only to be betrayed. Fulgrim, fallen to chaos, decapitated Ferrus Manus with a demonic sword. This definitive execution marked the point of no return for Fulgrim's soul, and left the Iron Hands Primarch undeniably slain. Ferrus's legion recovered no miraculous shard of their gene father to revive. His severed head and broken body were lost to them on that black sand. All accounts agree Ferrus Manus is truly dead. His noble spirit departed. Thus, barring some unprecedented act of dark cloning or forbidden resurrection, the Gorgon will not be returning to lead the Iron Hands. His legacy instead lives on through his chapter's relentless hatred of weakness and the bionic Iron Hands they bear in his honor. Sanguinius's death is perhaps the most storied tragedy of the Horus Heresy. During the final battle aboard Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, the Blood Angels Primarch faced Horus himself. Though valiant, Sanguinius was slain by the arch-traitor in single combat, a sacrificial moment that arguably opened a weakness in Horus's armor for the Emperor to exploit. After the heresy, Sanguinius's body was retrieved by Imperial forces. Rogal Dorn carried the angel's lifeless form from Horus's fallen battle barge. The Blood Angels entombed their Primarch's corpse in a golden sarcophagus, deep within the mausoleum on their homeworld of Baal. To this day, Sanguinius's body lies in state, perfectly preserved by stasis fields and venerated by his sons. Unlike Guilliman, who was in stasis healing a poison wound, Sanguinius was truly killed, and his soul is said to watch over his chapter from the Emperor's side. Imperial lore offers no prophecy of Sanguinius's return. His death triggered the Black Rage Curse in the Blood Angels, a perpetual reminder of his sacrifice. For the angel to return, it would take nothing short of a divine miracle or radical act of warp sorcery far beyond anything seen, an event the Imperium neither predicts nor counts on. In practical terms, Sanguinius's tale is complete. He stands as a martyr figure rather than a slumbering hero. These two Primarchs, one cut down by betrayal, the other by the arch-enemy, illustrate the finality of true death. The remaining Loyalist Primarchs, however, did not die definitive deaths in Imperial records. Their stories ended in mystery or disappearance, leaving cracks through which hope or rumour has trickled over the millennia. The Imperium considers them missing in action. Some presume dead, others believed to be alive in exile. It is among these vanished legends that we must search for the next returning Primarch. Rogal Dorn, the Lost Praetorian. Of the missing Primarchs, Rogal Dorn is often counted as presumed dead. Dorn, the stoic Praetorian of terror and Primarch of the Imperial Fists, disappeared during a bitter battle in the post-heresy years. In 781 M31, during what some sources call the First Black Crusade, Dorn led a desperate assault aboard a Chaos battleship, the Sword of Sacrilege, hoping to decapitate a Chaos fleet threatening the Imperium. Dorn's last stand took place on that ship's bridge. What happened next is shrouded in contradictory accounts. Later, Imperial records claim only fragments of Dorn's remains were recovered. In one version, only a single skeletal hand of Rogal Dorn was found and retrieved. The Imperial Fists secured this revered relic, entombing Dorn's hand in stasis as the chapter's most holy icon. To the wider Imperium, Dorn became an almost mythic figure, officially listed as missing, presumed dead, after that battle. Yet, there are whispers that Dorn's saga might not be over. The ambiguity of his end has spawned hope, notably during the War of the Beast in mid-M32, an apocalyptic Orc war. The Primarch Vulkan, who had briefly reappeared, made a cryptic comment that he would speak to Dorn again, implying Dorn might still exist at that time. In the current era, a fascinating omen comes from the Black Templars. In the age of the Dark Imperium, the Black Templars' Emperor's champion, Johannes Berengar, received a visionary prophecy. He saw himself fighting alongside a resurgent Rogal Dorn against the Emperor's children and their demon Primarch Fulgrim. This vision, in which Dorn reappeared at the climax of a great battle, led the Black Templars to launch a crusade against Fulgrim's forces. Such visions are not confirmation, but they fuel the belief that Dorn could return in humanity's hour of need, perhaps reborn or restored by the Emperor's will. Still, until we see the Praetorian step from the shadows, the Imperium must treat Dorn as lost. If he lives in some hidden realm or state, he has given no sign to his sons on Terra. Likelihood of return, moderate but uncertain. Dorn's legacy is immense, but the evidence of his survival is largely faith and conflicting lore. Any return might come shrouded in prophecy and doubt, much as his disappearance did. Jagatai Khan, the Warhawk in the webway. No Primarch's fate is as bound up with alien realms as that of Jaghatai Khan, Primarch of the White Scars. The Khan was a peerless hunter and warrior, and after the Horus Heresy, he continued to fight for the Imperium during the Great Scouring. But in 84 M31, roughly 70 years after the heresy, Jagatai vanished abruptly. The tale told by White Scar's lore is that the Khan was pursuing a band of Dark Eldar pirates who had been raiding the Scar's homeworld of Chogoris. In the Battle of Coruscant 5, the Khan clashed with a mighty Drukhari lord. Refusing to let the xenos escape judgment, Jagatai charged through a warp portal into the webway in pursuit of the Dark Eldar. He and his first Brotherhood riders thundered into those labyrinthine passages beyond real space and never returned. Imperial records from Codex Histories confirm that it was reported that Khan was lost within the webway during the pursuit of the xenos. The webway, an ancient interdimensional tunnel network, is notoriously difficult for humans to navigate, and it is infested with the Dark Eldar's hidden realms. Whether Jagatai became trapped, captured, or continued a never-ending hunt in that maze is unknown. For millennia now, the White Scars have kept faith that their Primarch lives somewhere within the webway and will one day return in a time of great need. This belief has become a core part of their chapter cult. They bear a particular hatred for the Drukhari, launching punitive raids into Comarach's outskirts whenever possible. It's both vengeance for their gene-sire and an ongoing search for any sign of him. Unlike Dorn or others, Jagatai Khan was not wounded unto death, nor even clearly defeated. He rode out of history on his own terms, chasing prey. This leaves his return a tantalizing possibility. If the stars aligned, the Khan could emerge from the webway just as swiftly as he disappeared. Perhaps an opportunity could arise. Say an alliance with the Eldars in Nari, or some cataclysm that spits him back into real space. However, as of the current timeline, no concrete evidence of Jagatai's presence has surfaced. The legends of Chogoris hold that he'll reappear when the Star Hunt calls. A poetic way to say when the Imperium desperately needs his blade again. Considering the dire state of the galaxy, that hour may be approaching. Likelihood of return, reasonably high. The Khan's absence has always felt more like an unresolved chapter than an ending. If he still lives as the White Scars believe, then any great new war, perhaps a massive chaos incursion or xenos threat, could be the moment for the Warhawk to strike again from out of nowhere. Corvus Corax, the shadow in the warp. Corvus Corax, Primarch of the Raven Guard, has a fate entwined with secrecy and the warp's mutating darkness. After the Horus Heresy, Corax was haunted by guilt over the atrocities committed in his Legion's gene seed experiments, the Raptors Project, and the losses his chapter suffered. He became increasingly solitary and morose. Approximately 1 year after the heresy's end, Corax vanished into the Eye of Terror on a self-imposed mission of vengeance. According to chapter lore, he spent a year in seclusion in the Ravenspire on deliverance. Then on the anniversary of his withdrawal, he spoke the cryptic words, "Nevermore," and departed into the stars heading for the Eye. His last recorded words intentionally echo the famous Terran poem of a raven, underlining his finality. Corax swore to hunt down the traitor Primarchs, in particular seeking retribution for the drop site massacre that nearly destroyed his legion. In the Eye of Terror, that hellish realm of chaos, Corax's legend only grew stranger. It is said that the powers of the warp mutated Corax over time into a wraith-like being of shadow. The once pale and raven-haired Primarch gained the ability to become literal shadow, stalking unseen and preying on the creatures of chaos. In one account from a Black Library short story, Corax indeed confronted the demon Primarch Lorgar on a corrupted world inside the Eye. Corax wreaked havoc on a Wordbearer's demon world and eventually dueled Lorgar himself. In that vicious encounter, Corax's newfound warp-born powers allowed him to dominate the fight. He nearly slew Lorgar, forcing the Wordbearer to flee and seal the portal behind him. As Lorgar escaped, Corax vowed to continue hunting all the traitor Primarchs through the Imperium. These accounts suggest that Corvus Corax is very much alive, in a sense, and active, but has deliberately chosen exile within the warp to fulfill his vengeance. He has not been seen by the Imperium since 22M31. Could Corax return to real space? Possibly, if he desired, or if some shift in the warp released him. But there is a question of what he has become after centuries in the Eye. As a being of shadow and wrath, Corax might find it difficult to reintegrate with the mortal realm. Still, the Raven Guard have not forgotten their father. They maintain hidden shrines to Corax, and some whisper that in the darkest moments they have felt a shiver of his presence. So far, though, Corax remains a wrathful phantom, more likely to continue his private war against chaos from within than to resume command of the Raven Guard in the Materium. Likelihood of return, uncertain and perhaps low. While he lives, or exists, Corax's path is deeply tied to his hunt for Lorgar and the others. Unless those traitors threaten the Imperium so directly that he must emerge to confront them on Terra or some critical battlefield, he seems content to be the Emperor's hidden dagger in the warp. If the final war with chaos comes, however, we could yet see the Raven Lord swoop out of the darkness when least expected. Vulkan, the undying flame. Of all the Primarchs, Vulkan of the Salamanders is unique for his perpetual nature. He is a perpetual, a rare immortal who can regenerate from death. Vulkan's lore is rich with tales of sacrifice and rebirth. He was killed multiple times during the Horus Heresy, notably by Conrad Kurz, the Night Lord's Primarch. Yet he returned each time due to this genetic immortality. Vulkan's post-heresy history is partially documented. Some accounts say he reigned as chapter master of the Salamanders for at least 3 millennia after the heresy's end, guiding his sons through the tumultuous early Imperial centuries. Eventually, however, Vulkan too withdrew from the Imperium. He departed on an enigmatic quest or exile, much like several of his brothers. Before he left, Vulkan set in motion a final test and promise for his chapter. He forged a tome, the Tome of Fire, and a collection of priceless artifacts. The Tome of Fire revealed that Vulkan had hidden 9 holy artifacts of his own make across the galaxy. Chapter legend holds that only when all 9 artifacts of Vulkan are recovered by the Salamanders will their Primarch return to them. In other words, Vulkan charged his sons with a grand scavenger hunt to prove their worthiness. This task has defined the Salamanders' mission for centuries. They have already retrieved 5 of the 9 relics, weapons, and tools of great power, and the hunt continues for the remaining 4. According to the tome's prophecy, once the Salamanders have all the artifacts and have shown themselves sufficiently tempered, Vulkan will judge them worthy and return. Furthermore, it is foretold he will lead them and humanity in the final war against the enemies of man thereafter. This paints Vulkan's return as a twofold event, a confirmation of his chapter's honor and the dawn of the End Times campaign, with Vulkan at the forefront of the Emperor's armies. Importantly, unlike his missing brothers, Vulkan has already made one dramatic return once before, during the War of the Beast around M32. In that monumental conflict against an Orc empire, Vulkan reappeared from obscurity to assist the Imperium, then vanished again when the crisis was over. This suggests that Vulkan is willing to intervene in dire situations, but he may be waiting for the Salamanders to fulfill his conditions. In the current era Indomitus, with the Great Rift open and humanity in peril, one might think Vulkan's prophesied final war is approaching. However, the Salamanders have not yet found all his relics, only 5 of 9 so far, so by his own stipulation, he may tarry until they complete the quest. That said, prophecy in 40k lore can be flexible. Perhaps the trials of the Indomitus Crusade will accelerate the process or prove the chapter's worth by deed rather than collection. Likelihood of return? High, but conditional. Vulkan is essentially confirmed alive. Being immortal makes his survival almost certain, and he has a clear return scenario built into the lore. The main uncertainty is timing. Games Workshop's narrative implies Vulkan returns at the time of the final apocalyptic conflict. If we are nearing that epoch, the chance rises. Otherwise, the Salamanders will continue to pursue his artifacts, inching closer to the day their primogenitor walks among them once more. Finally, we come to Leman Russ, Primarch of the Space Wolves, perhaps the most storied candidate for imminent return. Russ's disappearance is steeped in prophecy and saga. In the year 211 M31, roughly 2 centuries after the Emperor was entombed on the Golden Throne, Leman Russ held a great feast on Fenris, known as the Feast of the Emperor's Ascension. During the revelry, Russ was overcome by a sudden and grim vision. He silenced the hall, announced that he was leaving, and gave a final set of commands to his wolf guard. With his most trusted companions, save one, at his side, Russ departed Fenris that very night, venturing into the unknown, some say into the Eye of Terror, on a secret quest. Before leaving, the Wolf King made a pledge that has echoed down the ages. According to the chronicle Codicium Imperialis, Russ's last words to his assembled sons were, "There shall come a time far from now when our chapter itself is dying. Then, my children, I shall listen for your call in whatever realm of death holds me, and come I shall, no matter what the laws of life and death forbid. At the end, I will be there, for the final battle, for the wolf time. This solemn oath, to return for the wolf time, the final apocalyptic battle of the end of days, has become the bedrock of Space Wolves' mythos. It implies that Russ knew he was going to be absent for a long age, but promised that when the final conflict comes, he will fight at the side of his sons and the Allfather once more. In practice, the Space Wolves have interpreted Wolf Time as a prophesied doomsday for the chapter and the Imperium, when things are most dire. But where did Russ go? Various legends abound. One holds he went searching for a means to cure the Emperor, another that he took the fight to the traitor legions in the Eye of Terror, perhaps hunting for the missing Lionel Johnson or other foes. The Space Wolves chapter annually commemorated his disappearance by setting an empty place for him at their feasts, waiting for his return. They even launched grand expeditions called the Great Hunts to try and find Russ over the millennia. While these quests failed to locate the Primarch, they recovered relics and omens. For instance, Russ's armor was found on a chaos-held world during one great hunt. Importantly, in the late 41st millennium, there were signs that the wolf time was nearing. The 13th Black Crusade of Abaddon brought unparalleled destruction, and it was reported that the Space Wolves' lost 13th Company of Marines suddenly reappeared from the warp after 10,000 years. Some in the Imperium took this as an omen that Leman Russ had a hand in those events, that he perhaps was stirring, sending his warriors ahead, heralding his own return. Indeed, by the dawn of the 42nd millennium, many Space Wolves firmly believed that time will soon be upon them and the Imperium of man, as various forces gather to destroy humanity at the end of the 41st millennium. In other words, the current nightmare galaxy, with High Fleet Leviathan, the Great Rift, multiple demon Primarchs loose, looks exactly like the scenario Russ described, the chapter and Imperium on the brink of ruin. Given this context, Leman Russ stands out as the most likely Loyalist Primarch to return next. The explicit prophecy of his return during the Wolf Time is a clear narrative Chekhov's gun. The lore has been foreshadowing his comeback for decades. Now that the final battle seems to be unfolding, the stage is set. Additionally, Russ's Space Wolves are a prominent chapter in the setting, with ongoing stories that could naturally lead to their Primarch's reappearance. There are also no logistical barriers. Russ was never physically killed. He's simply elsewhere, presumably ageless thanks to either the warp or Fenrisian magic. If anything, one might argue a cautionary note. Russ's return portends doomsday. When he says, "At the end I will be there," it implies the situation will be truly dire when he shows up. In-universe, some Imperial scholars worry that the Wolf Time might herald not salvation, but the final cataclysm. The Space Wolves, however, embrace it as a rallying call. They believe their Primarch will arrive as a savior king for the last fight. In the narrative arc of Warhammer 40k, Russ has both the strongest textual evidence supporting his future return and the current timeline momentum behind it. Every new conflict that escalates the end times vibe makes the Wolftime prophecy more relevant. As of now, the Lion's recent return shows that Loyalist Primarchs can and will come back when needed. Leman Russ, the Wolf King, may well be the next to appear on the galactic stage, howling into battle once more with the Emperor's enemies in his sights. Bringing all this together, we find a pattern. When the Imperium's need is most dire, its greatest champions re-emerge. Guilliman's resurrection came as chaos tore Cadia apart. The Lion awakened just as half the galaxy drowned in darkness. Each returning Primarch has shifted the balance. Of the remaining Loyalist sons, several have promises woven into their legends that tie directly into humanity's hour of need, none more prominently than Leman Russ and Vulkan, with Jagatai Khan close behind. Each case carries a narrative weight. Russ as the prophesied savior of the final battle, Vulkan as the perpetual guardian waiting for his sons to prove themselves, Khan as the noble warrior lost on a personal vendetta but expected to ride back when the wild hunt calls. Even Rogal Dorn and Corax linger as wildcards on the periphery of possibility, their legends stirring at the edges of current events. So, which Loyalist Primarch is most likely to return next? Based on the preponderance of lore and the state of the Warhammer 40k story, the answer points to Leman Russ. The Space Wolves and many Imperial scholars interpret the cataclysms of the present as the wolf time foretold by Russ. Should the All-Father will it, the Wolf King will appear at the head of the Einherjar in the final conflict. And that final conflict is rapidly forming now in the Indomitus era. Russ's return seems not a question of if, but when, and the when may be very soon. Vulkan's return is also likely, but perhaps slightly further off, awaiting that ultimate last battle or the completion of his chapter's trials. Jagatai Khan remains a strong contender as well, especially if a plot involving the Eldar or the Webway comes to the fore. A sudden strike by the Khan out of nowhere would be dramatically fitting if the Imperium faces a new xenos menace or needs a lightning counteroffensive. So we conclude that Leman Russ is the prime candidate for the next Primarch to re-enter the fray, with Vulkan and Khan as the next most plausible, each supported by significant lore. This conclusion is rooted in the Emperor's tarot of evidence across codices and novels. Of course, the true will of the Emperor will decide the exact timing. The return of any Primarch is a galaxy-shaking event. Whichever loyal son comes next, it will herald a new chapter in the Imperium's unending war. As the final seeds of conflict are sown and the end times loom, the Adeptus Astartes and billions of Imperial citizens stand vigil, eyes turned toward the stars and the pages of prophecy, hoping to see a figure of legend step forward when darkness falls. Be it the Wolf King's silhouette against the moon of Fenris, the Warhawk emerging from a webway gate, or the immortal Forgefather rising from the fire. The Imperium endures on such hope, for in the grim darkness of the far future, a Primarch's return might be the last spark that lights the way to victory.